Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 38th episode of Tides of Lore. My name is Robert Silva. I am one half of your host team, joined as always by my good friend Tim. How are we doing this week, Tim?
Good, man. It was a good week. Got some Mythic Zeros going, teaching the newbies how to play, and we couldn't finish the first boss in a Mythic Zero. But, I grinded away. I got some of them pugged with some other people, and I got Jake his item level up. And my theory is if, I get my item level up, I get theirs individually up, that together we'll be able to do it. So that's my theory.
Statistically, you'll outmatch that Mythic Zero.
Exactly. Then it's on to Mythic 2s. And yeah.
The real challenge.
But, me and you and Bub can get them out and get our item level up, and then we can help them, right?
Yeah.
That's my theory, but I'm excited for the new season. PvP season 2 starts tomorrow, man. Super excited to get that starting. Yeah, man, I'm ready to get that Mythic Plus mount. It looks cool this season. It looks very cool.
I do remember what it looks like. It does look really cool. I'm super excited for that. You know me, I won't be doing any of that PvP stuff. It's just not my bread and butter, but I am excited for the season to start. I've been exploring Koresh and stuff like that, obviously getting everything set up and ready to go, getting my cloak, and I like Koresh. Just as a first kind of initial take on the location, I definitely missed skywriting. Getting out of the Undermine, getting off the ground and actually being able to fly around again feels really good. The zone is gorgeous. The music is great. I know there are some people who aren't necessarily fans of the story, even some of our friends who aren't. But I'm waiting to see where it goes. I think it can turn out poorly if the result ends up poor, but I think it can also make a lot of sense. I'm not necessarily make a lot of sense, but just work as a story.
I'm excited for the transmog, the mounts of Midnight, dude. They can do some crazy stuff. Now, I was talking to Bub. Go on.
Even just the Koresh transmogs that we've been able to get so far, some of the treasures and whatnot that have been lying about, already been some of the stuff that I was asking for. I was like, I want some of this future techie high fantasy looking stuff, and we're beginning some dual glaive lightsaber looking things, and I'm here for it. I'm excited.
The art style and everything. I was talking to Bub last night while we were doing some Mythic Zeros, but the art style and everything reminded him at least of Shadowlands. And it brought some PTSD. We were even fighting a boss, and I was like, dude, this is like a boss from Shadowlands. It looks exactly like a worm from the Shadowlands. So, so far it's good, but it did bring up some PTSD.
But I think we collectively agree, at least collectively in this podcast, that aesthetically, Shadowlands was cool.
Yeah.
It's the gameplay that was not necessarily enjoyable.
It just reminded me of it. I got stressed.
It's interesting that it reminded you of that, because it really reminded me a lot more of Argus, where it's kind of like this shattered realm, and you got these grand landscapes as you're going around places, and you have these teleporters that can take you to all different areas of the map, and little preserved pockets of sanctuary. It really reminded me of the Argus stuff.
Using the cloak reminded me of the Maw, because you can't mount. And
that is
so I was like, dude,
this
is people were talking about it in general, and I was like, this is Maw 2.0. But
you don't have to be there, and you can also travel in normal form.
I know. I was just saying, it reminded me of it. And then they literally call you Maw Walker.
Hey, that's just what they last talked to you about.
And then there's worms straight from the Shadowlands, in at least that Ecodome Alani, the first boss, that reminded me of Shadowlands. So yeah.
Well, we'll see. We'll see where it goes. I personally don't really see the connection. I can understand to a degree the not mounting stuff and whatnot, but I think overall it is a more pleasurable experience than anything that I encountered in the Maw. I'm not losing my fucking money just from getting randomly jumped by a bazillion goddamn Valkyries.
Well, Stygia, but yes.
Yeah. But yeah, that I'm super excited to get into some of this Ecodome stuff that they're going to start bringing in. I'm going to have to start preparing for that Nemesis question mark.
Yeah, I skipped last season.
I've been seeing people do it on Reddit. I know. People saying this fight's actually a lot of fun.
Good.
It's challenging, but it's fun, which is what I wanted to hear.
That means I'll do it.
Though these are the people that are diving into it right away. So, I mean, as long as I'm not kicking bombs, I think I'll be really happy regardless, as long as I'm playing World of Warcraft, not soccer.
It was so frustrating. That's why I skipped it.
I couldn't do it. I could not stand that fucking place, and I just ended up doing it so many times that I felt obligated to.
It's just like at the end of the day, I play this in my free time to enjoy it, and I was not enjoying that fight, so I didn't do it.
It's okay. When we get the War Within remix in 10 years, maybe they'll bring it back.
Yeah, that's what I was telling Bub, yeah.
But yes, that is what's been going on with us for this last week. We've been enjoying the newest patch 11.2 as we make our way into Koresh. I mean, also, it's just a quick side note that I did want to mention. I'm happy to see Venari back. They kind of had us like faked out that she died during one of the Shadowlands quests, and then, you know, you get indications that she like faked her death. So I'm happy that she's not dead. Her like character in the Maw was like the only redeeming part of it, I think.
Yeah. No, I do enjoy her in her story.
But yes, that is what's been going on with us for this last week. And in the podcast last week, we ended up moving away from the Alliance side of things and the Forsaken versus Llane conflict and moving over to the island of Khazan to discuss the rise of the goblins, particularly one Jaster Gallywix. What do you remember about last week, Tim?
Dude, I forgot his first name's Jaster, dude. Oh my gosh. What? Imagine that's your name, first off. I see why he turned into the person he is, right? But yeah, Jaster Gallywix. I saw him in his young days, that his dad was trying to be a good dad and like make him go into slavery or for a job, but he yearned for the mines and he wanted to buckle down and grind at an early age. Reminds me of 50 Cent, Jaster Gallywix. Doesn't 50 Cent have a weird first name too? No, it's Curtis. It's Curtis.
It's Curtis, yeah.
Curtis.
Though I will say that name doesn't, not what I would think when I think 50 either.
Yeah, Curtis and Jaster.
Respectfully, don't.
Cut from a similar cloth. But we saw his come up, right? Him grinding at an early age, becoming, you know, the trade prince that we know him that he was, at least. But yeah, and just like the different cartels of the Undermine, like learned that, hey, that Undermine that we just went to in 11.1, that John's been around, right? And we learned about him coming up and eventually joining the Horde.
Somehow, some way. Thrall, despite seeing him literally try and sell his people into slavery, is like, you're all right. Go talk to Garrosh. He'll like you, that's for sure.
And he did. What was the big selling point to join the Horde? Was there like a scratch your back? You know, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine?
I think, I mean, at least with Thrall's proposition to Gallywix, it's like, I can either turn you into a pile of ash via lightning right here and now, or you can provide resources for the Horde war machine. But again, that just doesn't really feel like something that Thrall would logically do. Like, if Garrosh was there, and Garrosh was like, you're basically being forced into servitude under the Horde, it would make sense.
Well, and it also allows him to do more crazy stunts, correct? Because, like, before, he didn't have the backing of anyone, right? But now he has the backing of the whole Horde. He can start to do some frowned upon activities and not be held accountable with, right?
That is true. And also, I mean, with Khazan erupting, the volcano washing over the island, making it basically uninhabitable. By the way, you know the dungeon, the Motherlode? That's Khazan.
Yeah. Oh, is that really?
Yeah. So when you like look on the map there's just like this lava flow that goes over everything. I'm pretty sure you even take the minecart past a lot of this. But yeah, Khazan. Anyway, yeah, after that happened, they didn't even really have anywhere to set up, so I guess they were kind of left with few options. But being given Ajara to set up in, the landmass, not the person, seemed probably like a pretty good deal. But yeah, that is pretty much, I think, all we talked about with Gallywix. We discussed him and kind of his hostile takeover, his strategy for taking over the Bilgewater cartel to become their new trade prince, and how he was trying to impress the daughter of the current trade prince. Took it a little bit over the top, apparently, by Goblin standards, and she was not all that impressed.
Oh, yeah. Given mixed signals.
And now they have I know. Now they have this long-distance relationship where she sends him bombs and he sends her flowers.
And she doesn't have a father anymore.
Oh, he's alive, I think.
Oh, is he?
But he's off. He got exiled. He didn't get murdered, surprisingly enough. Yeah. But yeah, and then we just discussed us becoming goblins, little starter zone goblins, and our events in Kazan where we won a football match for our team, and we saw the destruction of Kazan. We collect a bazillion macaroons just to get enslaved by Gallywix, where eventually we do overthrow him with the help of Thrall and some of the Horde. But we did also have a few comments from last week, so we're just going to get into those before we hop into today's episode. Starting with, we did have Lita Fairy saying, I listened to this while farming for the Back from Beyond meta achievement, so thank you for this. And in case you're unaware, that's the meta achievement for the Shadowlands. It's what gives you like that ghostly black dragon.
I thought,
such a cool mount.
I thought it gave you the ground mount of the hand.
No, I think that's a Torghast, or unless I'm thinking about a different hand. But I looked it up just to be sure. But yeah, shadowy dragon that you kind of like see flying around the maw and stuff like that.
Oh, the non-gladiator version. That was the gladiator mount, but it was armored. I know exactly what you're talking about. That is a sick mount.
Yep. I just barely got Lore Master with Shadowlands stuff, so I am pretty far behind on that achievement, but I'm eyeballing that for myself one day too.
Shadowlands remix. I'm just gonna. Is that my excuse for everything? I'm just not gonna get anything
at this point. It seems like
because the remix
for the longest time you wouldn't get reputations because you're like, I'm just gonna wait for the time walking to buy the badges. Well, you still don't have any of the Legion Paragon boxes.
Yeah, I do. I have the Army of the Light, all of them.
That does not count. Those ones are easy to get. You get like a bazillion rep for doing those world quests.
You said that.
And you had that before the time walking came out.
Well, you said I didn't have any. Those are Paragon mounts.
All right. But thank you for that comment. Next up, we did have JJJ Bunny 001 saying, wow, this is great stuff. Here I go on a glorious adventure on things I already know about, but you guys do a great job of making it entertaining regardless. And this was actually posted back on like one of our first 2 videos. So I thought that this was a really, really nice heartfelt message. We've actually been getting a lot of comments back on those older videos, and sometimes I'm like, do I feature these because it's so far back? But I'm gonna trust in you guys that you'll make it this far and you'll hear your own comment and be filled with the joy that your comments bring me. But yes, thank you so much for the kind words. They really do help to drive us to be the best creators that we can be. And for our last comment from last week, we did have the away fan saying, this Gylnaean reminds me a lot of Lord Farquaad from Shrek, especially the first part of today's episode where Farquaad had the line, some of you may die, but that is a sacrifice I am willing to take. He also seems like the betrayal type, so I can't say I was surprised. Just so that we're clear here, he is talking about Genn.
Right. Well, and
yeah,
this is why I should talk on Genn, even from someone who plays the game and knows the game like myself. And then the Wayfan does not play, just because I know the Wayfan. Even he doesn't like Genn. So I was like, dude,
yeah,
what are we doing here?
Yeah. And just to finish up his comment there, yeah, I enjoy hearing about the Werewolf Boys as a non-player who comes for the stories, and you too. I find their tales to be the most compelling. Looking forward to the Goblins. Keep crushing it, big dogs. And yeah, actually, a lot of people kind of had a pretty strong consensus that Genn is, in fact, the worst.
Yeah, I think, is he the worst? He asked. I kind of like Gallywix more than Genn.
More? What? He extorted an orphanage.
Well, I mean, but that was like kind of funny.
Oh my god. I guess it fits his racial identity better. That sounds questionable.
Nothing that Genn has done has made me like chuckle or like felt warm and fuzzy inside. But like, they do Jaster. They paint him in a different light, and it's kind of comical. Mm-hmm. But Genn is not funny. He's not likable. He's not anything.
He looks really cool when he's in his Worgen form.
Any Worgen can look cool. That doesn't.
But his model is extra cool looking.
Yeah, well, not anymore. He's not the leader anymore, right?
Yep. I mean, at some point we're gonna discuss Tess Greymane, who is his daughter, who's still young at this point in the story.
Hopefully, she's better.
She's actually really bad.
She
gets a lot of Hearthstone stories that we'll probably discuss, even though they're not really canon. But yeah, we like Tess Greymane. Tess Greymane's pretty cool. She got hand crossbows like the demon hunters from Diablo 3.
That's cool. Does she betray her people?
No, she leads them.
Oh, so she sounds like a cool person.
Yeah. Did you not do the Reclamation of Gylnaea's quest for Dragonflight?
I do so many quests, man.
Oh, I guess you were still Horde at that time though, so maybe you didn't.
Yeah, maybe not.
But yes, that is all the comments that we had from this last week. So thank you guys so much for those, and keep them coming. We really do appreciate it, and we have a lot of fun discussing these stories with you guys, so keep them rolling in. And today we are going to hop into some more Varian Wrynn Pog. So let's just hop right into that. Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Tides of Lore on YouTube, or if you're on Spotify, leave us a 5-star rating. It really helps the channel and ensures you won't miss a moment of this adventure. Now let's get started. Starting with, we open with King Varian Wrynn in the Keep of Stormwind, waking up in what I'm just going to immediately tell you is in fact a nightmare, as he finds himself roused by this faint, distant dripping sound throughout the halls of Stormwind, and he's like confused as he hears this muffled hum of a cheering crowd outside, and he's like, did I sleep through the Remembrance Day ceremonies? Like, what's going on? As he begins to walk through these icy halls, and he just hears that sound, drip, drip, drip. And as he walks, he feels this almost childlike fear overwhelm him. And that's when he's like, the fuck do I have to be afraid of? I'm Logosh. I'm the Ghost Wolf. I'm the gladiator who brings fear. I have nothing to be afraid of. So he continues on with a bit more candor, but he does begin to look around and realize he's like, all my guards are missing from their posts. Like, are they doing the Remembrance Day celebrations? Like, something sinister is going on here. And he makes his way further and further, where eventually he comes into the great throne room of Stormwind Keep, and the tattered tarps that hang down like cobwebs. He sees the golden lion of Stormwind embezzled above him. And that's when he hears a muffled cry that breaks through the silence and the sound of struggle as his gaze is snapped behind him. And immediately as he turns around, he recognizes the silhouette that is standing before him as none other than Garona Halforcen, the dark assassin of Gul'dan, and begins to realize what scene exactly he's standing in, as the regal armor-clad man laying on the floor before him is none other than his father, King Llane Wrynn. And the scene becomes more and more clear to him as the time goes on, and as Varian lets out this cry, basically shouting no, Garona drives this dripping, bloodied dagger into the body of his father, who lets out a twisted cry of agony, at which point Varian rushes over to hold his father as this visage of Garona disappears from him. And as his father stares up at him with this twisted, pained recognition on his face, blood spilling from his lips, he brings Varian in close and says one thing to him: this is how it always ends with Wrynn Kings. And with that, this dark cavern that is his father's mouth shifts and squirms and turns into this eruption of maggots pouring out from his father's mouth that then writhe up Varian's body and begin consuming him as well. And that is where he screams and bolts upright in his chair, waking from the dream as this warm sunlight shines into his private chambers of Stormwind Keep, where he is looking over a map of, well, battle maps, essentially, basically, is what they say. As he once again hears that roar of a cheering crowd, once again outside, he clutches onto this tarnished silver locket that he has always hanging from his neck, and he tries to open it, and like it did 1,000 times before, it remains sealed. He cannot get this locket opened. And that's when his chamber door burst open, as one General Marcus Jonathan, the commander of Stormwind Defense, strides in wearing a face of alarm, saying, "Is something wrong, Your Highness? Like, we heard you scream." And Varian quickly pockets the locket and rises to his feet and is just like, "Everything's fine. You know, don't worry about it." And he sits down in his chair once again, and he holds his hand up to his face, and that's when the general recognizes the deep lines of fatigue that are carved into his face. And it is a reminder to the general of the months spent battling the chaos in the wake of Deathwing's devastating attack over Stormwind. And that's when General Jonathan is in his full ceremonial armor, says, like, the honor ceremony is going to be in 3 hours. Are you ready? Is your speech ready to go? And Varian peers down at this piece of paper in front of him, and it's completely blank, and he's like, yeah, I'm getting there. It's a work in progress. He's like, I'm still working on it. And he says to himself in his mind, he's like, but the truth is that he just can't find the words. He can't find the words to rally the people after everything that's happened, after loss, after all the conflict that has come about for the people of Stormwind. But trying to steer away from that conversation, Varian asks the general, has my son arrived yet? And the general shakes his head and he says that no one has seen Prince Anduin, your highness. And Varian face turns to one of disappointment as he looks to the courtyard outside and sees a sea of people flying flags and streamers as children are dressed as their favorite of the heroes of Azeroth, and the scent of food and mead carries on the wind. So we're going to talk more about this, but this Remembrance Day thing, I mean, it's kind of like a Memorial Day sort of holiday for World of Warcraft. Why isn't this in the game? Like,
oh, that would be cool. You get to be Bolvar and
yeah, you get like a little item that maybe turns you into like Bolvar, turns you into Uther, turns you into something like that for like 10 minutes or something like that, right? Like, this should be in the game. And then you can get like quests to go like to the Tomb of Uther over in the Plaguelands, or go wherever, right?
Is it
go to the Broken Shore to see something that I shouldn't talk about in this?
Is it just a Alliance Day then? Or do you do
it for the right.
Do you do it for the Horde too and go like, all hail Sylvanas for
her great deeds and duty to the Horde, okay? I mean, we can do Vol'jin at least.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but we also have to think back. Like, there are like older Horde heroes that we could do. We could do like Rom.
Sourfang.
We could do Sourfang. We could do all these sorts of things and just kind of see some of their important locations.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a really cool idea. Like, even when they had like this WoW 20th anniversary thing, they had like the like viewing event. It's kind of hard to describe, but they would have like portals open to where you could go to like different locations and like enjoy a view of Azeroth. And I think you could literally have that same sort of style where it just teleports you to a location. You maybe get some text, or you get some voice lines about one of the heroes of Azeroth, kind of like the lore walking stuff, and then you can come back or do whatever.
Yeah.
Memorial Day or Remembrance Day. Do it.
I know, it would be cool.
But yes, that is where we get the details. Remembrance Day was both a memorial and a celebration for the heroes that have been etched in history throughout Azeroth. And it is this, at least in Stormwind, this kind of slow-moving parade towards the Valley of Heroes of Stormwind, where they have their the statues of the greatest champions of all of Stormwind. Or I guess just the Alliance in general, because there's like dwarves and helps. But yes, then Jonathan once again speaks, and he's like, whenever you're ready, the Archbishop is waiting for you outside, and they kind of got some stuff to talk to you about the city repairs. So whenever you're ready for that, let's get to it. And Varian's like, yes, in a moment. And he once again runs his hand over that delicate silver locket before shoving it deep into his pocket and lifting his eyes to the portrait of his father above the fireplace, and thinks to himself, today of all days, the leader of humanity needs a king, a rock of the Alliance who can show strength. And he thinks about his father, this example that loomed larger and more unyielding than any he could ever imagine. And he knew that his father would expect nothing less from him in this moment, nothing less than the very best.
Why doesn't Anduin think this way?
That's actually kind of what the story's about. So we'll get there. Kind of the conflict in the story. But yes, so you have Archbishop Benedictus standing outside of the keep in his finest ceremonial robes as well, with all these trinkets. And that's when King Varian Wrynn descends the steps, as the Archbishop says, light bless you, King Varian Wrynn. And he greets him back saying, and you as well, Father. Though he does smirk at him and say, well, though you do look like you're ready to meet the light himself. And the Archbishop laughs and is just like, in such times as these, we must all be ready to join the light at any moment. Which is, I guess, kind of a somber thing to say.
You must be ready to give your life up at any moment.
This guy plays WoW. But then there is this rumpled man that stands beside Benedictus, as he has all of these city diagrams and all this ink and paint on him and all this dirt and grime. And Varian recognizes him as the architect Baros Alexston, who I don't think this guy really has any stories, but he gets a name, so I'm saying the name. And Varian asks him, he's like, so how are the city repairs going? And he says, about as well as can be expected. Like, you know, there's only so much you can do when a massive dragon bursts forth from the elemental plane and skyrockets into your city at full speed. He's like, yep, the park gone. A bunch of the districts shattered to pieces. The main gate, the foundations, crumbling. So he's like, yeah, about as well as can be expected. And the Archbishop is like, he's being too modest. Like, you know, he's been getting miracles, getting Stormwind back in order. Like, he's even made improvements. I personally do think that post-Cataclysm Stormwind is cooler than pre-Cataclysm Stormwind, but obviously they're just two different times, and I love them both.
I just switched to Alliance and just exploring it because I played Alliance in Classic, right? But just recently switched into retail. There's some cool stuff, man. Like going up to where the leaders hang out towards the right. Dude, that new statue and fountain area, sick. The music, I don't know. What do you think? Is the music
obviously
better?
Grade A.
You think it, but is it better?
Well, I mean, it's got kind of a similar melody to it, where it's like the like fake Latin, like do 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 do.
Yeah.
And as long as it's got that, I'm here for it. Like, you could play them side by side, and I'm here for it.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of my point. Is like, I don't necessarily think one's better than the other. I just like them both.
Unlike the Orgrimmar change, classic Orgrimmar was better.
I think, yeah, I do think a classic Orgrimmar was better. I think it just kind of flowed a bit better. It was less confusing. I do get them wanting to spread it out a bit more, and I like having like the troll area and the Tauren area feel a bit more filled out. But yeah, I think I'm inclined to agree. Having like the shadow, the cleft, and the war chief seat at the back and whatnot, it felt more appropriate to me.
Yeah, just being able to walk into Orgrimmar and kill their leader right in the front is so stupid.
I want you guys to help me do that, by the way. I still need the achievement.
Easy.
Yeah. I tried to solo it while I was doing the Fire Festival, but
no,
I couldn't do it.
No.
I was like, my Demon Hunter's got an obscene amount of health, and I could, but they would chain CC me, and it didn't go very well after that. Where was I? But Varian then presses the architect, and he's like, so what is so pressing that you needed me? And he's like, well, like I said, we investigated the main two towers at the city entrance that the dragon landed on, and he must be even heavier than he looks, because we tunneled way down to the foundations, and they are severely damaged. And the same is true for the east side of the wing and the buildings in the harbor and the old barracks, and all sorts of damage has just been spread all across Stormwind City. And the architect's like, it's going to take a lot of repairs and it will not be cheap. And as soon as the architect brings up money, Varian like flashes eyes of anger at him, being like, what, he's going to talk about money at a time like this? Like, people died. And
this is how the wars started before. He didn't pay the Defias.
That's a good point. The architect doesn't even look at him. He just like literally is just like looking down at his designs and stuff like that, as Varian then looks over to the castle walls, where he does see a massive gaping hole in the wall. And with this being the case, he's like, the architect sees this, and he's like, we've already requisitioned more stones. Like, we'll get that repaired ASAP, I promise. And, you know, castles have a tendency to be drafty enough without missing entire walls, right, Varian? And Varian's like, true enough, but he is in no mood for laughing as he runs his hand across this wall, and his glove catches on something as he grabs onto it, and he pulls forth a dagger-shaped shard of Deathwing's elementium armor that had been broken free during his attack. And it is he just describes it as a super black obsidian stone that is sharp. And in that moment, he's like, this vile creature was a menace to Stormwind and threatens all of its people. And like, we will rebuild, we'll stand firm, and at whatever cost, we will make him pay tenfold for what he took from us. And that's when his eyes gaze through the wall, through the hole, over to that bustling harbor that is now full of all sorts of different masts from all sorts of different ships, from Kaldori to Llane, all sorts of different peoples having come to the city of Stormwind to celebrate this Remembrance Day. But also, Varian asks the Archbishop, and he's like, have they come this year out of honor for the past, or are they in fear of the future? And Benedictus tells him, he's like, to be sure, many of them do seek shelter from the dark worm that menaces them, and some proclaim it the end of times. And Varian's just like, I would waste little breath, even less sleep, on the insane ramblings of people like the Twilight Hammer cult. And That's when Benedictus is just like, no doubt the people of Stormwind need hope, but they need a plan even more. And I trust that our king will give them something to believe in at this honor ceremony. And as they begin to prepare for the day, Varian ponders his upcoming speech, still lacking the ability to find the words for what will rally his people, as they then begin to make their way to the throne room to begin their honor delegation. And that's where we cut to our another character. You know, you can't really have an alliance story without both Varian and who else, Tim? Who else is going to be in this story?
Bolvar's already doing his thing. Anduin?
Ooh, I mean, you're not wrong, but I mean, that's honestly a fair guess, so I'm going to give you a win there. But this is where we cut to Jaina Proudmoore, standing in the throne room of Stormwind Keep, observing the assembly of all these nobles and politicians and dignitaries as she looks through this hall, absolutely filled to the brink, these numbers spilling out beyond the grand archway. And as leader of Theramore, Jaina is standing amongst the honored members of Varian's court, standing right beside none other than, hey, Genn Greymane.
They should just chain him up like the dog he is.
You want him left out in the doghouse.
I mean, honestly.
Literally.
Do him a favor.
But yes, as her face scans the room, she's searching for none other than Prince Anduin, where she does remember a recent argument between both Varian and Anduin that ends up leaving Anduin leaving the city of Stormwind and making his way to the lands of the Draenei to basically become an apprentice underneath none other than Prophet Velen in seeking the wisdom of the light to become a better priest. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. That has its own story, but it's kind of like, I really think we need to give it like its own full episode, because a lot of that story I really think could come back into play like this next expansion, and I really want to give it the appropriate attention that it deserves. So just know for now that that's where Anduin has been, and there is more to talk about with him there. But as she scans over the crowd, she does not find it, and knowing Varian's temper, Anduin's absence speaks volume that the rift between the two of them has remained. And as Greymane sighs, waiting for Varian to arrive, Jaina's eyes travel over to the seat of Stormwind itself. They call it the lion seat, where these two stone lions flank both sides of the chair. And she says they're carved as if to guard all of Azeroth itself. And as she stares at it, she considers just how deeply that image of vigilance must have been instilled in Varian as a boy, and the toll that such a expectation would have on such a young man. And she then thinks about Arthas, and she thinks about how she knew firsthand how that weight of responsibility, of impossible duty, could crush people and break them. And I just thought, I mean, I like getting, little insights to people discussing characters like Arthas, especially in this sort of situation where, like, when you really, I feel like when you really think about it, like, Varian and Arthas have like a lot of parallels, but in a way, Varian kind of becomes the king that Arthas could have been.
I see that too, but Varian's just more confident. He is wiser.
I think that, yeah.
He's not a young, stupid boy. I mean, they were about the same age.
Yeah, because, I mean, you get that scene with them where they're younger, but I also think it's kind of like that almost little brother mentality with Arthas, where it's like he was always kind of second place. Like, even when it came to him and Varian dueling, Varian always whooped him. And when it came to, training under Uther, he was never going to be the paladin that Uther was. Uther is like literally the Lightbringer. He is the first paladin. So, like, I think that's a lot of what plays into Arthas's mentality when he does make the rash decisions that he eventually does go on to, even with the best of intentions behind them.
And paladins should always beat warriors in 1v1. Like, always. So that just tells me he's trash at the game.
But yes, with Jaina's gift of reading the situation and reading people, she scans this relentless crowd as well. And she notices this knot of nobles encircling this one Lord Aldous Lescovar, a burly man that has this sour expression and the son of one of the nobles that ended up betraying Stormwind during that whole Onyxia stuff that went on. So honestly, I'm surprised he even has a seat here still. But hey, Varian is a just king, I suppose. Sins of the father and all that, right?
Yes, yes.
But yes, radiating from this figure is this infecting mood that radiate dissatisfaction amongst them and bitter as they speak more and more of the name King Wrynn, spitting it out like the venom. And Jaina does admit, even in her own mind, like Varian can be a difficult man. His intensity weighs heavily on both his allies and his enemies, but she knows that in his heart he would lay down his life to save any person in Stormwind, and that he lives by ancient principles that few people understand, a code that even ends up isolating him from people like his own son, that leaves him opening for exploit in a way. And she thinks like it must be really difficult to have to be like both Logush and Varian Wrynn, the king of Stormwind, at the same time. And as she decides, like, I came here to kind of dissuade Varian from trying to fight against the Horde before things get even crazier, I'll be honest, good luck, Jaina. Shit's already crazier. She makes her way over to these drunken delegates, and she says, remember well, which apparently is the greeting for Remembrance Day, where they say, remember well to each other. And he responds back to Jaina saying, remember well. And he's dressed in all these rich furs and silk, and his harsh eyes scan Jaina up and down. Understandable, big dog. I can't even blame you. But he says, like, what brings you this far across the sea when your own homeland is burning in slag? And she ignores this jab and says, like, just like you, I've come to pay my respect to the heroes of old, but also seek a wise plan for the new dangers that ail the Alliance today. And as this man gestures over at his companions, he's like, these new dangers hurt everybody, rich and poor. Like, how did it come to this? Who should we blame? And she basically is just like, look, Alliance leadership has faced many challenges. They have made errors. They have learned lessons, but they have also achieved great victories. And it's not something that we should just push to the side because we are in hard times. And he spats back at her being like, the Alliance wars are depleting our money and our blood, and its reckless adventuring and personal vendettas undermine any chances that we have at peace or prosperity. And Jaina is like, well, I mean, that is actually fair. Like, many people share your concerns, and such ill-directed aggression towards the Horde isn't really going to lead to that ending, will it? Good allies are rare these days, even as our enemies multiply without end. And this figure, this noble Lescovar, places his hand on Jaina's shoulder and says, I think we have an orc lover here, boys.
Well, you know what they say, once you go orc, you don't go back.
Oh, alrighty. And as he laughs and all of his friends laugh, he leans in with hot breath, mocking, or maybe your taste runs more for Tauren these days. Which, my God, some people have a lot of confidence, because, like, this is like literally talking shit to somebody who is holding a WMD in their back pocket.
Right.
Like, I'm imagining like an anime, like if you ever seen Jujutsu Kaisen, like literally hitting fucking purple on his ass, just disintegrating, become dust, my friend. To ashes, you say. But Jaina slides out of his grip, smiling diplomatically, and just says, I understand your issues that you have with the king. We'll see if we can determine an outcome that all will be happy with. And he says, we know that you and the king are close. You should use your influence and make him listen to his nobles. You should tell him to find peace where he can, and then we'll deal with the damn dragon before there's no city left to trade with. And Jaina's like, yeah, I hear you. And then he presses her, and he's like, then do your duty. No one profits from mindless war, and the king's current plans are, as a voice echoes out from behind the man, are what? And the Baron's face flushes red as he whips around to see none other entering the room than King Varian Wrynn himself. And Varian strides in, saying, please, Baron, enlighten us. Tell us what my plans will bring. As he eyes him down, going face to face with this noble. And the man stumbles backwards, saying, my apologies, your highness. We were merely having a lively debate with Theramore's esteemed leader. And Varian just says, while you were a whelp in your family's fetid den, I was leading Stormwind's armies to triumph. And as his eyes sweep the room for any other that oppose him, he says, I have led us across the sea to Northrend's frozen wastes, to the Undercity's depths, victory after victory, and yet many of you still doubt. As a bunch of the people begin to shift uneasily, and Jaina Proudmoore begins to seethe inwardly, realizing it might be a bit late to avoid Varian's fury and get the diplomatic outcome that I was seeking coming here. And That's when Varian then looks at everybody and says, why did you come here today? To waste my time? To demand I hear petty complaints about my efforts to protect this world? To protect you? And his eyes burn with this fire that they say are reminiscent of the ghost wolf Logush himself. And then he says, or did you come to see Logush, the one who wages war with the same relish as his enemies? And the tension thickens throughout the entire crowd. And Varian, in one final statement, says, some of you say that I am no better than those we fight, that I am a monster. If so, then I am the monster that you need. I am the one who will strike fear into the hearts of darkness, the one with the courage to do whatever it takes to protect humanity from the abyss.
Man, he's pretty badass, bro.
Bro, I fucking love Varian. He's so cool.
Anduin drank like a little too much soy milk or something.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned him, because as Varian, his words ring out, his eyes immediately lock onto one person, and it is Prince Anduin at the back of the throne room, staring on at Varian in horror. Come on! Some people need to be put in check, Anduin. I'm a staunch Anduin supporter, but come on, bruh. That was cool.
Exactly.
Don't take no shit from no noble snob. Hell no. But yes, Anduin's eyes are filled with fear and bewilderment, and that very sight pierces Varian's heart as his son then turns to flee the throne room, and he tries to soften his expression, but in his heart it is just filled with rage, and he collapses into his throne. And as he then covers his face with his hand, he motions for everyone to leave the throne room, where only Jaina and Archbishop Benedictus remain, watching him carefully. Thank you for tuning in to Tides of Lore. If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your fellow adventurers. Your support makes all the difference. Thank you. And that's when Varian pulls that silver locket out of his pocket to rub it once again, and begins to pace the throne room like a caged animal. And with each agitated past, Jaina Proudmoore and Archbishop Benedictus just stare on in basically fear of the tension in the room. And Benedictus is like, the prince will understand someday, your highness. Like, he's an enlightened soul. He just doesn't get it for right now. And Benedictus glances at Jaina for support before Varian is just like, I never should have let him leave. Anduin's duty is here with his people, not with the Draenei. And I just think this is funny because, one, Varian, it was your idea initially to have Anduin go out into the world and start seeing things. You can't be bad now.
Right.
I guess it was one thing when it was Ironforge. It was just like across the pond. And now he got him over in fucking Blood Mist Isle on the opposite continent of the world.
Yeah. No one goes there anyways. Probably hard to find a mage for it back.
They should remaster Blood Mist Isles too.
Yeah.
I mean, any of the zones that you can't fly in, I understand the legacy of them, but no one goes there anymore. Like you said, at least give them some life. But anyway, Jaina then counters, being like, he's still young. Anduin's on a quest to find out who he really is. And Varian stops pacing and glares at her and snaps at Jaina, saying, who he is? Jaina, he is the heir to the throne of Stormwind and nearly a grown man. At his age, I had already mastered the sword and met our enemies in battle. And Jaina just kind of flinches at the heat in his voice and responds, is the only measure of a man how early of an age he kills. And can't you see that Anduin has chosen a different path than that? And Varian hesitates and admits, he's like, I've come to terms with Anduin's choice, but I fear that he lacks the strength to rule, that these are perilous times, and that the world teeters on the brink, so he needs to be prepared to rule. And the Archbishop is like, but the light shows us a different path for each of us, and to whatever end is in store. Varian snaps at him. He just says, no more sermons. I don't need that right now. The real world is not as forgiving as the church. Being king is dangerous work, and one misstep, people will die. And then Benedictus steps forward, placing his hand on Varian's shoulder, and says, on Remembrance Day more than any other, I know that you hold yourself responsible for much, especially for what we've lost, what you have lost. As Varian's hand once again drifts to that silver locket, and his mind in a storm of worry, saying, if Anduin is not ready, if he is weak in any way, it will lead to, and he cuts himself off, holding onto that locket as it shakes in his hand. Jaina quickly steps in and is just like, Anduin has a different strength to give to the world. He chose priesthood for a reason. He's a healer and attuned to the light. And Varian nods and he's like, what you say is true. Anduin has never been like me. And he once again sits on the throne, And Benedictus says, as you said earlier, my king, times have changed. Then it is clear that we must change with them. And maybe this is the time where we move past the age of heroes like Lothar and resorting to them as the only people to survive in a world. And Varian...
Remember when men were men?
Yeah?
No.
We used to fight in wars. But yes, Varian ponders the words, and then the Archbishop once again speaks up and says, speaking of renewal, your highness, I have a gift for you this Remembrance Day, for you and the prince both. And Varian sighs, and he's like, unfortunately, as you might have noticed, the prince is gone and doesn't really want to be with me, so I'm afraid you can only give the gift to me. And the Archbishop is just like, don't be troubled, like the light can shine through even in the darkest night, like meet me later today and I believe it'll remedy all of your ills. And then he's like, okay, I will meet you then. And after both Jaina and Benedictus begin to depart, Varian calls to the Archbishop and he says, do you think that Anduin will be a good king? And Benedictus turns and says, most certainly, sire. If he survives the crucible of these times, desperate days tend to burn away all impurities, leaving only the strongest steel behind. And the Wrynn kings have always shown their mettle. And with that, he bows, and the throne room is filled with a heavy silence. As later in the day, Varian then makes his way to the cemetery, as the sun begins to set, where he was told to end up meeting with the Archbishop. And he finds himself making his way over to his wife's gravestone, where he walks through this graveyard, and it says that he smells the spicy, sweet scents of lilac flowers, carrying with it the memory of Tiffin's laughter and her smile and her warmth, as he finds himself then standing in front of this stone lion guarding the grave of his wife. And in a trance-like state, he reads the final line on her plaque that reads, for our world grows only colder in your absence. And the truth of that statement strikes hard with him, that Anduin and Tiffin are the only things that ever truly gave Varian warmth in the world. As footsteps startle him from behind, he flips around and he sees none other than Archbishop Benedictus approaching with Anduin Wrynn. And Anduin's spots Varian, and immediately his face turns to that of disgust as he casts a sharp glance at the Archbishop, realizing that Anduin also wasn't really informed that Varian would be here. And Varian, as he sees his son in the full light, he is shocked. He's like, dang, he's like really grown. Like he's literally grown a whole head taller than when I last saw him after he had left. And Anduin talks to the Archbishop, and he's like, when you implored me to accompany you, Archbishop, you failed to mention that we'd be joined by my father. And Benedictus smiles down at him and says, sometimes, dear prince, to heal the world, you must keep a few secrets. And Varian is like, so is this the gift, a surprise family reunion? And Benedictus nods. He's like, partly, but there is something else. Remember a long time ago, like many, many years, you gave me a quest just after your wife passed away? And Varian thinks, he's like, what was that? And that's when Benedictus pulls out this glinting silver key, and Anduin recognizes it immediately. The key to Mother's locket. And Varian is speechless. You found it. How? And Benedictus bows his head and he's like, as you commanded, it took time to track down, but I thought today was as good as any to return these memories back to you both. And they thank Benedictus, saying, you're a good man, and I hesitate to think what we do without you. As the Archbishop bows, he says, please allow me to leave you guys to it. Peace be with you both, as he disappears amongst the grove of the trees. And Anduin turns towards Tiffin's gravestone, and Varian breaks the silence between the two, saying, it's good to see you. Like, I think you've grown a full head since. And then he catches himself, and he's like, we'll skip over the last time we saw each other. And he asks him, he's like, so how does the Draenei food suit you? And Anduin just says, keeps his eye on the gravestone and doesn't really talk too much before just saying, Master Velen says that we must keep growing in every direction every day. And Varian nods at him and says it's worthy advice, especially for the future king. And Anduin winces at the very words of king as he turns his eyes to his father and says, is the world going to die? And Varian is caught off guard by this question, as the man before him is so much older than he used to be. But as he asks this question, he sees a child and a scared boy. And he says, I hold no deep philosophy on such things, but I know that the world cycles. And just as the seasons do, everything has its times, and everything must come and go in this circle of renewal. And Varian draws his sword, and he says, just like a great weapon, the edge must be renewed now and then to keep its full power. And Anduin nods. He says, that's how Velen talks too. Like, he says that death and rebirth are part of the same wheel of the stars, and that his people have seen the long march of time like no other before. And Varian says, then he must know that kings and kingdoms come and go, but honor, truth, and duty last forever. And Anduin cuts in, and he says, and love. And Varian thinks about that, and he says, and love. And Anduin's like, I think that love outlasts anything. And Varian, his hands speak almost before his mouth does, as he holds the locket out to Anduin and says, I have kept your mother's locket all these years to remind me of my responsibility as king, to remember that actions have consequences and that a leader must live with his choices, both good and bad, because so many are counting on us. And Varian says, I want you, and stops himself and says, I thought maybe you would want to have it, now if you would like it. And Anduin nods, taking Tiffin's locket, gently running his fingers over the engraved patterns the same way that Varian had done for years. And Varian then passes Anduin the key, and he describes it as a passing of the torch, basically granting his son this symbol of belonging and adulthood that one day might guide him in the future. And he says, it is yours now. You can open it when you are ready. And Anduin slips the key into his pouch, choosing to face the past on his own time. As Varian's voice softens, he says, she loved that locket, Anduin. She loved it beautifully, and all of the people of Stormwind, but I think she loved you more than anything. And Anduin begins to tear up, because how can't you? We're literally talking about his dead mother. And Varian says to him, I've been blind, not seeing the man that you have become. And Anduin's tears begin to spill freely, and he says, I wished so much that I were more like you, father. I really do. I want to be a great king, but I'm not strong like you are, as he wipes his tears from his eyes. And Varian puts his arm around him, and he says, no, Anduin, you have more courage than I do. It flows deep from within your heart. And as Varian continues, he says, I stand rigid and inflexible against the storm. I can stand strong, but you feel the wind. You bend with it and you make it your own, and thus you become unbreakable, just the same. As Varian turns towards Tiffin's memorial, he says, your mother had those same qualities. She perfected the art of gentle persuasion, and her love moved the world. And it is good that you cry over her, Anduin. I never had the strength to do that. And Anduin just says, I miss her. I know I was just a baby, but I can still feel her. And Varian smiles, he says, and that's why you will be the greatest of kings one day. And, well, Varian's gaze then sweeps the area, and he says, so, what direction do you think this ambush is going to come from? And Anduin brushes away the tears, and he says, they've been watching us for some time. Who do you think that they are? And Varian says, they're probably assassins, probably using this holiday as cover, a good time to strike while all of Stormwind leaders are in public. So what do you think the plan should be? And Anduin scans quickly, and he says, they'll come from the east to block the main exit. It will be a blunt force attack, not guile. If we put our backs against the wall, then we can force them to face us on more even terms. And as Varian hears his son say this, he smiles, and he says, impressive. You were actually listening in all those tedious lessons that I gave you. And Anduin replies that you've taught me more than you understand, father. And as the fireworks begin to explode overhead with all these magic explosions to celebrate the closing of this ceremony, it is also a symbol for these armed assassins wielding cruel weapons to rush forward towards both Anduin and Varian. And Varian, just a very action hero-esque, says, it appears that I'm going to be late for my speech.
It's time to kick ass and chew gum, and I'm all out of
And I'm all out of ass. But yes, as 10 attackers begin closing on them, Anduin's eyes spot a sorcerer in the back in these dark purple robes that shimmer with these protective wards. And Varian says, I don't like the look of that one. Anduin nods and draws his bow from off his shoulder. And as the sorcerer begins to draw this glowing oval in the air, chanting words of summoning, as Varian clashes in a steel flurry against the attackers, where both Varian and his son rush forward into battle with their call of, for the Alliance. Let's go, baby!
It never sounds as impactful as, for the Horde!
For the Alliance! I mean, I think there's one that's more impactful, but again, we can't talk about that in this episode. But yes, as all of these different people stand shoulder to shoulder in the Valley of Heroes watching these fireworks go up, this parade of people going all the way from the gates of Stormwind down to the village of Goldshire in the distance, the city seems to be caught up in all of the spectacle that's going on. And standing on stage, the honor delegation is far less cheerful. Varian Wrynn was supposed to be here, and he's definitely not, and no one can find him. So as Jaina and the leader of the SI7, Mathias Shaw, exchange worried glances, they basically throw one of their field marshals to the wolves, and they're like, hey, you need to keep giving a speech until we can find Varian. Good luck. And the marshal is like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? I lead men. I don't win hearts of people like this. And he's like, good luck, as he begins to give them an impromptu lecture about one of his favorite subjects, the history and obscure technicalities of steam engine siege tactics.
Riveting.
Oh, the most exciting stuff. And that is where we cut back to Varian Wrynn. They say that he moves like a wind elemental. His motions a blur as he leaps, spins, and strikes in every direction to shield Anduin from the attackers, swinging his blade Llane in wide arcs while they keep their back to the stone wall. And off in the distance, that sorcerer continues to cast its spell, the portal of its summoning growing ever larger. And as Varian parries axe blow and crushes enemy after enemy, he tries to press forward towards the summoner, but every time that he does, the attackers immediately swap to going for Anduin, and he is forced to spend his efforts defending his son, knowing, despite this, that they are just stalling for time, trying to keep him occupied until whatever's coming through that portal arrives. But as Varian does steal a glance over at his son, he feels pride as he sees his son loosening arrow after arrow with unflinching accuracy, and these assassins laying on the ground with these bristling shafts. Anduin dodges a thrown dagger, and he begins to tell his father, they're warded, like, watch out, you need be careful, they are magically protected. And Varian just barks back. He's like, we have to stay close. We got to reach that sorcerer before he completes his spell. And Anduin's eyes light up with determination, and he says two can play at the protection game, as he casts none other than Power Ward Shield on him and Varian. Good spell. As they rush in, Llane spins with this blaze of light, and from head to gut, he cleaves one of the enemies in two that tumbles before hitting the ground, and without pause, he pivots to the next enemy, quickly striking him down with equal ferocity. Anduin, in the background, just lighting him up with the bow, casting his holy spells. For the longest time, they kind of built Anduin up to be a person that uses a bow and arrow, and then I think they were like, wait, priests can't use bows.
Well, he also wears plate, though, and he's a priest.
Maybe he should just fully cheat. Maybe he should be a priest that wears plate and uses bows.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
At this point, I mean, might as well.
The world is his oyster. But yes, as they fight as one, cutting through this last line of defenders in this perfect synchronicity, Varian's brute force crushing any who step forward, and Anduin's arrows finding the most vulnerable gaps in any armor. The sorcerer, seeing his time slip away, pours more and more of his energy into the summoning spell, leaving all of his allies without the protection of wards that they previously had. As the General Jonathan and Mathias Shaw and Jaina Proudmoore all meet up, and they're like, we can't find him anywhere. Like, we need to alert the SI7. We need to mobilize them. We need to basically put the city on full alert. Something is wrong. As they all go sprinting off in different directions, trying to find Varian. And Varian still fighting like a feral wolf, they say. There's only 3 of these enemies remaining, where Anduin's arrows drop one of them quickly, and Varian rushes in with a blinding speed, parrying both of their blades at once, knocking them free from their hands, and decapitating both enemies before they hit the floor. God, I love Varian Wrynn.
Yeah, dude, Arthas didn't do anything cool.
It says, literally, with the war cry from the depths of the maelstrom, Logush spins in with a deadly whirlwind, sundering armor and decapitating both assassins in one swift motion, their heads falling to the ground with the same lifeless expressions they'd worn in their final moments.
This is like vanilla, like warrior, before they got nerfed in
This is the Swifty Warrior lore accurate version. But yes, as the sorcerer grins, being like, you're too late, your doom is, and just as he says that, he's cut short as Varian immediately charges forward, driving his sword into the sorcerer's chest, and Anduin's arrow hisses through the air, catching him square in the neck, and the sorcerer manages to finish the portal as he falls to the ground wearing a smirk of victory in his last moments, dying, as the portal pulses with this bright light, framing a huge dark silhouette Varian calls for Anduin to get back as a large draconoid figure appears, clad in purple Twilight's hammer armor, and they say that it's the largest one that they've ever seen. Half dragon, half man, radiating menace. And it rushes in. It goes to fight with Varian. It has these two massive war axes that they say are the size of siege weapons. And Varian steps between Anduin and the monster, and he says, "Stay behind me. No matter what happens, you have to stay behind me. I will keep this creature back. It is something different." And back at the ceremony field, they're still given this information about the Gnomergun steam crank and how the pressure-assisted steam engine could launch a projectile over 50 stone.
Holy shit.
This is, again, riveting.
With stone.
And the nobles begin losing patience, and one of them turns to the Archbishop and is like, "This is a disaster. Like, where's the king? Archbishop, get in there. You need to save this." And the Archbishop's like, no, you flatter me, but this is my place. We'll just wait to see what's become of our king." As the audience's move shifts from restless to hostile, and you have Varian Wrynn with bright blood streaming from fresh wounds as he reels from the brutal attack of this Draconoid's twin axes rattling off of him. And he does manage to find an opportunity to slash at its belly armor, but Llane just sparks off of its enchanted plating as it makes its cut. And determined to keep the beast's focus away from his stun, he keeps striking regardless. And without warning, the Draconoid spins around unnaturally quick for its speed, its tail slamming into Varian, sending him flying off of his feet as he hits the floor, laying motionless, dust and blood masking his features. Anduin cries out through the chaos. And Anduin begins rushing forward towards his father as the Draconoid then turns towards him, swinging its monstrous axe down. And it says that Anduin manages to quickly raise his bow in a hopeless defense that has his weapon shatter into pieces before the force of the axe slams into him, sending him flying, spinning to the ground like a ragdoll. And I'm just going to assume that he had a Power Word shield on, because otherwise I don't see how this wouldn't have turned Anduin into like a liquid on the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't block things with a bow like that. Like, even if it was like a real fight, like if somebody attacked you with a greatsword and you had a bow, like, it's not a great blocking weapon.
Yeah, I see hunters beat my ass still.
Yeah, they're cheaters though. But as Anduin then gets sent flying face down into the dirt, his body refuses to obey as he crawls for it to get up. He barely finds the willpower to roll out of the way just as the Draconoid's other axe slams into the ground next to him. And as the dirt sprays, he stares off and he sees his father still form, and he holds himself proudly as he can, thinking like, I should be unafraid and proud when meeting this monster in my head. As he stares at its cold blue eyes with this strange, unexpected calmness, the Draconoid raises both of its axes, fangs dripping with bloodlust, when suddenly, as the prince calls out in one final prayer, a flash of blue and gold armor appear in front of him, as Varian, bloodied and unbroken, swings into frame, staggering the blow with Llane to block it. As the steel of both their weapons clash, they both get knocked free and get disarmed. The second axe comes swinging down towards Varian, as Varian, determined to protect his son, remains in place as the second one digs through his armor, biting deep into his ribcage and slamming him into the floor. And as Anduin stares on in horror, he meets Varian's eyes that have a sort of relief in them. As Anduin's eyes widen in horror, he sees the axe that has remained buried in the king's chest. And standing over the fallen king, the Draconoid laughs. This axe, still lodged in Varian's chest, comes ripping out with a cold sound, a cold, wet notching sound, I guess is what you would call it, as Varian barely finds the will to tell his son, run, feeling nothing but the numbness of death taking him. And Varian's awareness begins to fade until he senses the feeling of someone kneeling next to him. And of course, it's none other than Anduin, his hands raised in prayer as holy light flares all around him, this golden nova forcing this Draconoid to move backwards as step by step the prince advances against this monster, and Varian thinks, as a king should. And as Anduin calls out for barriers and holy fire, all of this basically just casting nonstop holy spells at this draconoid creature, calling fire from the sky and calling barriers to protect himself. Eventually, blinded and screaming from this holy inferno, this draconoid is staggered where his armor has been stripped of enchantments, and seeing his only opportunity, Varian pulls the broken shard of armor that he had taken from Deathwing earlier from the wall and rushes forward, driving it into the stomach of the draconic creature as it crashes down, dying in front of him. And as Varian then falls unconscious in this last act, briefly returning to him, he feels Anduin holding him as tears are freely following onto his blood. Jaina and General Jonathan arrive in a sprint with all sorts of guards pouring out behind them as they kneel beside the dying king. And Varian's gaze softens as he looks at his son, and he says, "You're right. Love outlasts everything." And Varian can feel the cold beginning to spread to every ounce of his body, and he opens his eyes once more, forcing a faint smile. As Anduin says, "I'm so sorry." He says, "No, it is I who am sorry for not seeing earlier what you are, what you always have been. I'm so proud that you are my son." And as his bloody hand reached up to Anduin's cheek, leaving a red smear, he says, "Do not mourn for me, Anduin. This has always been my fate. Do not let it be yours." As his arm falls limp, and Anduin sits frozen, staring over the corpse of his fallen father, General Jonathan rushes over, saying, "Come, Anduin, we must get you to safety. The heir must be protected." And
what a goat, dude.
Dude,
this makes me
R.I.P. the goat.
This is what a leader should be. Look at take notes, Genn Greymane.
And Anduin has always kind of been stubborn, kind of like his father, right? Because he doesn't move. He says that his mind refuses to accept what his eyes just saw. And as Jaina reaches for him, he shoves them both aside, and his voice breaks into defiance and says, "No, this is not how it ends. Do you hear me, father? I'm a Wrynn prince, and I will not again watch another loved one die before me. This is not our fate." As his shout rings out so powerfully that the clouds above them part, those nearby could only watch in stunned silence as Anduin's eyes close and he begins chanting softly. Before those words swell into a powerful melodic hymn, the light flares from his hands, growing so bright that it challenges even that of the setting sun behind him. And this graveyard stands in a full midday brilliance, all shadows banish. As Anduin's song reaches its height, in this final surge, this liquid, like molten gold, streams from his fingers into Varian's body. As the guards shield their eyes from just how bright this is, Anduin holds his father close, speaking now in a gentle melodic prayer. He presses his hand against Varian's forehead, and with this imbues him with one final charge of divine power. And that's where, over at the festival, Archbishop Benedictus is finally taking the stage, and he's like, "I suppose I could help." And he's like, "As I stand before you, we face a terrible time. The world is it has torn its foundations asunder, and Azeroth is now being cleansed by divine fire." And I think this is a good time to remind everybody that Archbishop Benedictus is, in fact, a member of the Twilight Hammer cult, and he's definitely the one that set up that ambush in the first place. So, just remember that.
Wait, so he got the key to the locket as a nice gesture, but set him up?
It seems like it was kind of something that he could surefire get Varian alone for. But yeah, it is a bit of an interesting little, like, double long con or whatever the fuck you want to call it.
Was Benedictus playing the long con? Because, dude, I remember him being in the Temple of Light or Cathedral of Light in Classic.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know exactly when he joins the Twilight Hammer cult, but they do mention that ever since like the end of Wrath of the Lich King, he's been basically creating members within Stormwind for it.
Crazy.
And he'll go on to be a character, like an actual enemy. So, but yes, as Benedictus basks in this crowd's praise because they're finally happy with at least somebody not talking about gnomish tech, his eyes close in this self-satisfaction until a sudden louder cheer breaks his focus, and an even greater roar follows, and confused, he turns around and his expression shifts to surprise to absolute horror, I guess I would call it, as limping onto the stage, King Varian Wrynn and Prince Anduin, battered, bloody, but supporting one another, make their way in front of the crowd. And Benedictus, momentarily stunned, bows down and yields the podium to Varian, and Anduin steadies his father's weakened frame until they reach the front, where Varian sends Anduin to go sit with Jaina and the rest of the honor delegation as he begins to give his speech, where he says, "Hear me, people of Stormwind. Your king stands before you with a heart still beating, a drum that grows stronger each day as he sees the determination you have shown to rebuild from tragedy. Just as these statues still stand, watch, so shall Stormwind, now and forever." As the crowd erupts into thunderous cheers. They're loving it. They love the propaganda answers. As Varian's voice builds with more pride, he says, "We are gathered here on Remembrance Day to honor heroes that have shown us the way by the light of their lives and the glory of their deeds." And he calls out the names of Uther, the Lightbringer, and the crowd goes crazy. And he says, "Anduin, Lothar," and the crowd goes even crazier. And he eventually holds up a hand to continue his speech. Varian no longer feels alone in his burden to safeguard the world, that the blood of his forebears flowed within him, and that it will carry on to Anduin, who will carry it on and so forth. And that fills him with the resolve to lead with pride and dignity, that one day the same strength would empower all who came to rule under the Wrynn line. And Varian addresses his people with one final conviction, saying, "In the past, we have relied on strength of steel to forge our way. We protect what we can, destroy what we must, but that is not the only way. If we were to ever restore the world, then there must come a time when the leaders of Azeroth are no longer the warriors, but instead the healers." As his gaze shifts over to Anduin, and he says, "By your side stand all the heroes of tomorrow, you and you and you," as he points out to the crowd of all of these young children that begin to cheer up as well. Varian says, "So people of Stormwind, let us unite this day. Let us renew our promise to uphold and protect the light, and together we will face down this dark new storm as humanity always has, and humanity always will." As the crowd erupts into cheers of "Long live King Varian, long live King Varian," and the chants wash over Varian, filling him with this deep abiding peace, and for the first time in years he feels truly at home, not just as king but as a father. And that's all we got to talk about today.
I don't know, man. I kind of like him being badass and ruthless. I guess it's good
I think
be in touch with your emotions too.
And I don't even necessarily think that's the point of like his speech or his story. I think it's more that he's like, and I think you get like the ideal of this during the Legion cinematic, right? Where he says like, "I now believe as you do that peace is the noblest aspiration, but to preserve peace, we must be willing to fight." And I think that is to say that Varian sees himself as the necessary violence that exists to create a world where Anduin can be the person to lead.
Because Anduin wouldn't be able to become Anduin if there wasn't a bunch of killing of some orcs.
Exactly. So I think it's not necessarily that he's like, I love the Horde and all that, but like, I will do whatever it takes to create that world.
Right. And if that means killing some hordes.
Tough shit, guys. Shouldn't have been there. If you guys did make it this far, please make sure that you drop us a like, a comment, a subscribe. If you're over on Spotify, please drop us 5 stars or a follow. We would really appreciate both of them. If you guys did make it this far, I'm really curious, what do you guys think about like how we discussed the parallel between Uther and Varian? Do you think that kind of makes sense that Varian is kind of who, or not Uther, but Arthas do you think that it makes sense that Varian could kind of be the prince that Arthas was always meant to be, or be the king that Arthas was always meant to be? I'm curious because I never really realized just how many parallels are kind of drawn between the two of them throughout a lot of these like shorter stories and stuff like that. So let me know what you guys think, and until next week, we'll see you. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this episode. Your guys' support truly means the world to us. If you're interested in hearing more, we have our full show on YouTube and Spotify, new episodes dropping every Tuesday. I also want to take this moment to give a special thank you to Fantasy Lo-Fi for providing the music for this episode. You can find them on YouTube at Fantasy Lo-Fi or on Spotify under Bits and Hits. Be sure to show them some love, as their music does truly bring this journey to life. Once again, thank you for joining us on Tides of Lore, and we will see you next week.